الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our gatherings a blessed one and to give us all ikhlas, sincerity, and to make us among those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. Inshallah ta'ala, tonight the title is An-Naseeha or Naseeha. It's a Naseeha or an advice from a great Imam, Imam Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, the writer of the book of Al-Mughni and others, one of the great Imma in fiqh and others. He gave a wasiyah, and this wasiyah is in a small book as an advice to all Muslims, and we'll just go through the first part of it, and hopefully inshallah ta'ala in other times we'll continue, because the rest of it talks about what corrupts and ruins the deeds and talks about the fear of Allah and to be watchful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Things of our reminders that we're all in need of to purify our hearts. And that's why inshallah ta'ala, to benefit from it, this is a wasiyah that the ulama always go from one to the other. And we have what is sufficient for us in the book of Allah and in the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. But these are all from the Quran and the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. So to get into it right away, inshallah, this is as a result of someone asked him to give him a nasiha, to give him an advice or a wasiyah or a bequest. And without going to the wasiyah word by word, just briefly some of the things I might quote. But he said, rahimahullah, that one of his righteous brothers had asked him to write a wasiyah for him, to write something that he would be with him. So he says initially, فَامْتَنَعْتُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ, I did not do it in the beginning. Why? لِعِلْمِ أَنِّي غَيْرُ مُسْتَوْصٍ فِي نَفْسِي وَلَا عَامِلٍ بِمَا يَنْبَغِي. And this is how the humbleness of the ulama. He said, because I'm not applying it necessarily upon myself and not acting upon what I should do. And sometimes different cultures, they misunderstand these statements. They think as if he's saying he's a bad person, but he's going to do it anyway. This is how every Muslim should be. And the more the person is higher in knowledge and fear of Allah, the more that he sees himself in his ibadah to Allah, that he did nothing, that everything is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He does not like his actions. He humbles himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no arrogance. And this is basically what each and every one of us should look at ourselves. Because we're talking about the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that is laysa kamithli shay. Nothing is the like of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night without even 1 second being done in anything else but the ibadah, the salah, the siyam, and so on, he would not fulfill the rights of Allah. It's nothing but the mercy of Allah that He made it easy for us, that it's very simple actions that in the capacity of everyone. But part or one of the ways to purify our hearts, that a person sees that this is all help from Allah and he doesn't see himself as anyone, but rather he sees himself that he is in need of the help of Allah. So then, ثم بدا لي أن أجيبه إلى مسألتي. Then it made clear to me that I should reply to his questioning or to give the advice, hoping for the reward to fulfill the need of my brother. قضاء حوائج المسلمين رجاء ثواب قضاء حاجة الأخ المسلم. To fulfill the need of your brother is a good deed. So he has a need. He needs some advice. So from that perspective, not that I the one to be sought for such a thing. And وَدُعَائِهِ لِي, and him in his dua for me, and for the rewards that I would receive the reward because of my wasiyah. وَأَنْ أَكُونَ مِنَ الدَّالِّينَ عَلَى الْخَيْرِ, and for me to be among those who call people to al-khayr. حِينَ عَجِزْتُ عَنْ عَمَلِي, when I'm not able to do the khayr in the most perfect way, at least to advise people, to guide people towards it, which is always how the nasiha or the concern in the heart that a Muslim should have towards others. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you shall believe till he love for his brother what he loved for himself. So even if we have shortcomings, we should always try to benefit others so that maybe others would benefit and would be better than ourselves. وَالْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, and deeds are by their intentions. So the first thing that he talked, and this is basically what we'll go through inshallah ta'ala, he said to him, and for us and for each and every one of us, and again this is, as they say, and many times we translate, so sometimes the translation is literal, so requires for us to pay attention to that. So when I say, for example, أَعِرُونِ الْأَسْمَاعِ وَالْقُلُوبِ, give me your ears and your hearts, not physically, right? But means be attentive, listen, and your heart, don't get distracted in these moments, inshallah ta'ala. Don't get distracted by anything. Leave everything for the sake of Allah, so that we, inshallah ta'ala, benefit from what we hear. So he says, and at the end, inshallah, you will see that you did not hear anything new. But it's a reminder for each and every one of us. So, اعلم رحمك الله. Have the knowledge, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon you, that this dunya, this worldly life, mazra'atul akhirah. It's the place of cultivating, planting for the hereafter. This is the place where you put the seed and you water the seed and you work. The fruits, the produce, not in this life. The produce of what you do in this life is in the hereafter. And this is what's supposed to be, because the hereafter is the place of the thawab wal-iqab, the good deed and the bad deed. وَمَتْجَرُ أَرْبَاحِهَا, the profits you would receive in the hereafter. But the place where you make the trade is in this life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purchased the lives and the wealth of the believers, and in return they would get the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the place, this worldly life, is the place to attain the provisions for the long journey to come. Because each and every one of us, for those who are adults present here and those who hear us, the matter is over. You're not a child anymore. So it's a journey that we have to take. There's no return. There's no such a thing, I quit. No, it's a journey that we all have to take. And it's a long one. After this life, the barzakh, in the grave, the day of judgment, 50,000 years long, and then an everlasting life either in Jannah or wal-'iyadhu billah in the hellfire. So to be aware of this and to be concerned about this. So this is now the place to get the provisions for the journey. And of course, the more we contemplate over this, and with the Quran, biha baraz as-sabiqun, the foremost are the best. وَفَازَ الْمُتَّقُونَ, and the people of taqwa, they are the winners in this life. وَأَفْلَحَ الصَّادِقُونَ, and the truthful ones are the successful ones. وَرَبِحَ الْعَامِلُونَ, the good doers. It's all about deeds. They will be profitable, inshallah ta'ala. وَخَسِرَ الْمُبْطِلُونَ, who are the ones in loss? As it's stated in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the evildoers were all but actions. And that this dar, this life that we live in, أمنية أهل الجنة. So a very important point to remember, that what we are experiencing now, life that we are having now, and Allah knows best when it's going to be taken away from us, this is the wish of both the people of Jannah and the people of the hellfire. The people in Jannah, they will wish that they have this life that we have now. And the people of the hellfire, they will wish also to have the life that we have now. And how the two opposites will wish for the same thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the people of the hellfire, وَهُمْ يَصْطَرِخُونَ فِيهَا رَبَّنَا أَخْرِجْنَا نَعْمَلْ صَالِحًا غَيْرَ الَّذِي كُنَّا نَعْمَلْ. It's very obvious. The people of the hellfire, screaming in the hellfire, they would say, our Lord, get us out from the hellfire. To do what? نَعْمَلْ صَالِحًا. So that we would do righteous good deeds, meaning in this worldly life. غَيْرَ الَّذِي كُنَّا نَعْمَلْ, opposite to what we used to do. But of course it's too late for them, because the place that was supposed to, or the time that we're supposed to do this, in this worldly life. And there are many verses in the Quran that shows the regret of the people of the hellfire in the day of judgment. And it's by the mercy of Allah that we have it, so that the person would then be aware of what's coming ahead. And he mentioned some of the verses of the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that Ash-Shaheed, the martyr, in a long hadith, without reading the entire hadith, that the martyr, he will wish that he would come back to this worldly life. So this is what's mentioned. The people of the hellfire, they want to come back to do the good deeds and to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's too late for them. The shuhada, the martyrs, will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the same thing. In one of the narrations, Allah will ask them, Saluni, ask for whatever you want. So they would say, يا ربنا نسألك أن ترد أرواحنا في أجسادنا ثم تردنا إلى الدنيا. Oh Allah, we ask you that you return us back to the dunya. فنقتل فيك مرة أخرى. So that they become martyrs again. So, and also this is something that can never be attained. So both, some of the people, not all the people of Jannah, only the shuhada would wish to come back for the honor that they receive, and the people of the hellfire, of course, they wish to come back. So that means it's to show us, and this is the Naseeha, that the life that we are witnessing now is such a precious thing, such a valuable thing to be alive. For what? To be sinful? No, but rather to do the righteous good deeds before it's too late. And therefore he says, وَعَلَمْ يَا أَخِي, have the knowledge, O my brother, رحمك الله, that أن الله تعالى قد علم أنهم يسألون. This is with regards to the martyrs, but he did not fulfill their wish because they are in the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibrahim al-Taymi, one of the early generations of Islam, he said something that is very famous from what he said. He said, مثلت نفسي في الجنة. And this is how they used to make the tafakkur and reflecting and thinking. He says, I pictured myself as if I'm in Jannah. آكل من ثمارها, eating from its fruits and being with the hur and enjoying the na'im and the delight of the Jannah. So then I said to myself, he's still alive in this life, when he was alive, يا نفس, O my nafs, O myself, أي شيء تتمنين, what is the thing that you're wishing for? So now as if he's in Jannah, and then he would say what I wish to have when I'm in Jannah. Then his nafs, as if he's making a conversation with his own self, that I would go back to this dunya, to this worldly life, so that I increase the amal, the actions, الذي نلت به هذا. I would increase the actions that I attained by these actions, this Jannah. So it want to come back to this worldly life to increase the actions, to do more good deeds because of the nafs, and now the human being sees the effect of the actions, the good deeds, in the hereafter. And then he says, then ثم مثلت نفسي في النار. Then I pictured myself, والعياذ بالله, as if he's in the hellfire. وحرق بجحيمها, and mentioning some other pain in the hellfire. So then I said to myself, what is the thing that you would wish to have in the hellfire? To come back to this dunya, to do the actions that would save me from the hellfire. So then he said, فَقُلْتُ لِنَفْسِي. Now he come back to the reality that he's in, which is in this life. يَا نَفْسُ فَأَنْتِ فِي الْأُمْنِيَّةِ فَعْمَلِ. O nafs, you are in the wishful state now, so work. Right? So the same thing apply for each and every one of us. And the matter will come. So therefore we are in the best of our stage whatsoever when it comes to, if we are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whether a person, وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ فَارِ, he will wish to come to this dunya. Whether a person in Jannah, maybe he would wish that he would come to this dunya to increase his actions, even though there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the believer would never want to come back to this dunya except the martyr. But the point here is you are in the wish time. This is the wishful time that everybody wants to be in, to show the importance of this life. And he mentioned some of the examples of this and how the Salaf al-Salih, the early generations of Islam, they would contemplate looking into the verses of the Quran, takes us to the hereafter, and then see the reality of this life. And then he says, وَعْلَمْ رَحِمَكَ اللَّهِ, and have the knowledge, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon you. أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُبُورِ أُمْنِيَةُ أَحَدِهِمْ. What is the umniyah? What is the wish that the people in the graves now that they wish they have? And each and every one of us, we know someone, a loved one, passed away. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon all of the Muslimin, those who passed away, and grant them all Jannah, inshallah ta'ala. So, and they used to be with us, and we talk to them, and we eat with them, and subhanallah, this is how life is. And the same thing, each and every one of us, the maut or the death is the one reality that no one can ever deny. And whoever becomes foolish in this life and never think about it, he is deceiving himself. And thinking about death is not to make our life miserable, but the opposite, to be real in this life, and to enjoy the real enjoyment in this life by being obedient to Allah, by being content, by being happy with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, the people of al-qubur, the people of the graves, what is their wish now? أن يسبح تسبيحة, that he would make one tasbih. The person in the grave now, he wished that he can come back to make one tasbih. Subhanallah. تزيد في حسناته, that would increase in his hasanat, in his good deeds. أو يقدر or يقدر على توبة من بعض سيئاته, or he has the ability to make tawbah from some of his sins. أو ركعة or one ركعة ترفع في درجاته, that would elevate him in his levels. And the reason why تسبيحة, tawbah, rak'ah, these things that we belittle in our life. And this is all from the ways of the shaitan. One tasbihah, one tahmida is worth the entire life and whatever it contains. The Prophet ﷺ said, لأن أقول سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر أحب إلي. For me to say these words is more beloved to me مما طلعت عليه الشمس. More beloved to me than anything that the sun rose over, meaning the entire world and whatever it contains. ركعتي الفجر خير من الدنيا وما فيها. The 2 rak'ah sunnah of al-Fajr is better than the entire world and whatever it contains. And this is not of exaggeration, this is the reality of this life. So never to belittle the good deeds and to show, and also to show how precious the nafas, the time that it takes for us to take a breath in, inhaling and exhaling. This is such a precious time in our life to use it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be obedient to Allah. So tasbihah increases in good deeds, tawbah, repenting to Allah, and that's why we have to do these types of things, rak'ah. He says, وَقَدْ رَوَيْنَا, and it's okay sometimes to mention these types of things in which he, not a hadith, just incident that he received from others. أَنَّ رَجُلًا رَكَعَ رَكَعَتَيْنِ إِلَى جَانِبِ قَبْرٍ. Then a man, he made 2 rak'ah close to a qabr. By the way, it's not permissible to pray in the graveyard. And it's haram to pray in the graveyard. And haram to pray in a masjid that has grave in it. So the point here is, he was close to a grave, and then he fell asleep. فَرَأَى صَاحِبَ الْقَبْرِ فِي الْمَنَامِ. He saw the one in the grave in his dream. He said, تَنَحَّ عَنِّي فَقَدْ أَذَيْتَنِي. He said, stay away from me, you had harmed me. والله إن هاتين الركعتين اللتين ركعتهما لو كانتا لي كانتا أحب إلي من الدنيا وما فيها. And this is why it's mentioned here, because there's a hadith that says the same meaning. He said to him in his dream that these 2 rak'ah that you prayed, it's more beloved to me than this entire world that you're in and whatever is in it. Then he said to him, إنكم تعملون ولا تعلمون. You are acting but you do not know. ونحن نعلم ولا نعمل. And we know and we can't act. Now they know the reality of things, but there's no means for them to act. So for you being still alive, then the most important thing is al-amal. And the same thing has been mentioned from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, but when he passed by a grave, and he said, rak'atan, 2 rak'ah, mimma tahqirun, from what you belittle, you look down upon. What's 2 rak'ah? Right? Ahabbu ila hadha, more beloved to the one in this grave, min baqiyati dunyakum, from the rest of your dunya, with whatever it contains. The 2 rak'ah, that you might do it in haste and not really care about it and things like this. So that therefore, as a result of this, فَاغْتَنِمْ رَحِمَكَ اللَّهِ حَيَاتَكَ النَّفِيسَةِ. Take advantage, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon you, from this precious life. When people hear these types of things, are they supposed to look down on this life? No, this life is such a precious life. Very valuable. Nothing more valuable in our life than the time that we're still alive in. This is how precious the life is. وَاحْتَفِظْ بِأَوْقَاتِكَ الْعَزِيزَةِ. And guard your time, which is very precious and very valuable. And have the knowledge, we all know this, but have the knowledge that would affect you and would purify your heart and make your heart certain upon it. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ مُدَّةَ حَيَاتِكَ مَحْدُودَةً. Have the knowledge that the time, lifespan of your life is limited. We're not in this earth forever. وَأَنْفَاسَكَ مَعْدُودَةً. And your breath are counted. فَكُلُّ نَفَسٍ يَنْقُصُ بِهِ جُزْءٌ مِّنْكَ. Every breath you take decreases part of you. We are nothing but anfas. We're nothing but breaths we take. So whatever, how many numbers of breaths we take in this life, every time we take a breath, then part of our life had decreased. وَالْعُمْرُ كُلُّهُ قَصِيرٌ. And the entire life is very short. وَالْبَاقِي مِنْهُ هُوَ الْيَسِيرُ. And what's left from it is what's very less. وَكُلُّ جُزْءٍ مِنْهُ جَوْهَرَةٌ نَفِيسَةٌ. And every part of this life is like a precious jewel or something that is of great value. لَا عِدَّ لَهَا وَلَا خَلَفَ مِنْهَا. There's no like of it and there's no replace of it. Once it passed, This minute that we just passed, there's no way for us to bring it back. Yesterday, you cannot bring yesterday back. Whatever passes, it's gone. وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا. Every person, his actions, when you do an action, it flies away from you, goes away from you. Where does it go? In the book of deeds. And in the day of judgment, his book will be brought with all of the deeds in it. So he says, فَإِنَّ بِهَذِهِ الْحَيَاةِ الْيَسِيرَةِ, because of this short life that we have in, is the everlasting, either in an-na'im, in the delight, or wal-'iyadhu billah, in the painful punishment. And if you if you make this analogy, or you weigh this life of this world compared to khulud al-abad, the everlasting life, then علمت أن كل نفس, then you would realize, when you compare the limited life, 100 years, nobody lives, very rarely that someone would live for 100 years. How many people live for 120 years? Compared to an everlasting life. So the one breath that you take equals to what? Compared to the everlasting life in the hereafter. يعدل أكثر من ألف. Keep on saying. It's more than 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. And you keep going also forever. Years in the delight that there's no limits to it. So what is one breath equals to the hereafter? أو خلاف ذلك وما كان هكذا فلا قيمة له. Therefore, if this is the case, then this time or this life is of no value whatsoever compared to the hereafter, from the sense that to waste it. To waste this life for the benefit of this life, what's the point? A person would ruin the hereafter, which is an everlasting life, and at the same time it shows how precious this short period of life is. It's not thousands of years where a person can do things, it's only counted in the tens of years if a person would live for tens of years. فَلَا تُضَيِّعْ جَوَاهِرَ عُمُرِكَ. So now the anfas, we agreed upon that the breaths we take are all, each one is the best jewelry on the face of earth, the most expensive thing, very valuable thing. Do not ruin, do not waste these precious jewels of your life, بِغَيْرِ عَمَل, without actions. So, when a person goes for a vacation or have fun or moments of fun, but then it's gone, right? It becomes only memories. You wish it can go forever, but that's not how life is, right? So it doesn't matter how much fun or enjoyment that a person would have in this life, it's going to pass. But what really matters is the amal. If a person wants to save himself from being in state of misery, is to occupy our time with amal, and this is how the life becomes precious. And do not let it go without a return. And put yourself in the struggle that there's no nafas, no breath that you take unless you are in state of obedience to Allah. And being in the state of obedience to Allah, that means we do the obligations, we stay away from haram, and we enjoy what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted for us in the halal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most merciful, when He made the 5 daily salah, for example, if you're making sure that you're establishing the salah, and in between you're protecting yourself from the haram, whether it's in earnings and in actions, and you do the recommended acts and dhikr and Quran, and having this understanding, then the person is always in state of ta'ah, in state of obedience to Allah. Or something that you would do to get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you have a jawhara, al-jawhara is a precious stone or something of value in this life, and you lose it, what happens? You would be in such a grief and sadness. Or بَلْ لَوْ ضَاعَ مِنْكَ دِينَارٌ لَسَأَكَ. Rather, if a dinar, you lose a dinar, you'll be sad because you lost it. فَكَيْفَ تُفَرِّطُ فِي سَاعَاتِكَ وَأَوْقَاتِكَ. So how can you waste your hours and your times like this? And subhanallah, we are living at times, and it's the ways of Iblis, that wasting time, let alone being sinful, wasting times is industries. You would find people working day and night to waste people's life, just to waste life, to waste time for nothing, let alone being, wal-'iyadhu billah, in a sinful way. This life is a serious one, and the life of a believer is a serious one. And that's why when we put things in the right perspective, so that even when it comes to the da'wah to Allah, when we always say that we need to get the teenagers and the young ones to have fun, it's not about fun, it's about the seriousness of this life. When we enjoy ourselves with the halal, yes, we have sa'a in our religion, we have spaciousness in our religion, we have so much ease in the deen of Islam. But the ease is a mean so that we are serious in our life. But if someone is just playing all of his life, he'll be a failure in this life and in the hereafter. So to be aware of these types of matters and to take advantage of every breath we take. So he says, وَكَيْفَ لَا تَحْزَنُ عَلَى عُمُرِكَ الذَّاهِبِ بِغَيْرِ عِوَضٍ. How can you not be sad because of this time that you pass without عِوَض, without anything in return? So before we end, inshallah ta'ala, and this is meant to be brief, but this is how the nasiha, this is how the advice that we should remind one another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he said, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. The four categories of things that saves the person from being in loss. That all mankind in loss except إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, those who believe and do righteous good deeds. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, they remind one another with the truth, and they remind one another with patience. So that's the type of nasiha and the type of reminders that we should remind one another. And the etiquettes of it, of course, is very important. And this is one of the acts of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has been less and less in our life. Why? Because the nasiha, these types of nasiha, maybe it doesn't hurt the feelings of anyone. But it's a fact that when someone gives us a nasiha, meaning that we're doing something wrong. As one of the early generations of Islam, he said to a brother when he came and wanted to advise him, he said, لا تنصحني إلا بما أكره. By the way, don't give me a nasiha unless it's something that I hate. Meaning, don't praise me. If you praise me, you're not giving me a nasiha. Right? If you say, mashallah, brother, you're just a great brother. Okay? I know that you're setting the stage for me so that you can correct my mistakes. Mashallah, this is wisdom. But where is the nasiha? The nasiha is that we correct one another. And if people are sincere, right, then they would love for someone to correct them. But not to insult them. Yes, not to shame them in front of the whole world. This is haram, this is evil. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in the heart. But if a person takes someone on the side and give him a sincere advice, even if the advice is, as we heard, remember, our life is precious. Don't waste your life. It doesn't mean that he is saying about himself, oh, be like me. No, this is as we heard in the beginning of the nasiha. This is something that a person, he's reminding himself and reminding others. And Allah knows what's in the hearts. So we should not be also judging, or does that mean that he sees that I'm wasting my life? We'll all waste our life. Even if you are the head of the believers on the face of earth. You know, so this is the type of having the concern towards one another and being patient with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the last point, which is in a different part of the book, he says, وَأَلْزِمْ قَلْبَكَ الْفِكْرَ فِي نِعَمِ اللَّهِ لِتَشْكُرَهَا. Make your heart. We're not able physically to do all kinds of acts of worship at all times. We're limited as human beings. So, but make your heart always reflecting upon the favors of Allah so that you are grateful to Allah. وَفِي ذُنُوبِكَ لِتَسْتَغْفِرَهَا. And in your sins to seek forgiveness from Allah. وَفِي تَفْرِيطِكَ لِتَنْدَمْ. And in your shortcomings so that you regret it. And if you remember that the three things that Ibn al-Qayyim said about مَدَارُ السَّعَادَةِ عَلَيْهَا. If you want to be happy, the happiness is upon three things. Three things makes a person happy in this life and hereafter. If you have a ni'mah, if you have a favor of Allah, you're grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this favor. And if you have a baliyah or difficulty, you're patient. You're seeking patience while you're going through difficult times. And if you have a sin, you're repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how life is. Gratefulness, being patient at the same time. And constantly repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to ilzam qalbak, to have our hearts always reflecting upon the ayat of Allah that we have in the Quran, many verses that reminds us of this. To look at the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to know the exaltation of Allah and the wisdom of Allah. And what's coming ahead of you, وَفِيمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْكَ, what you're going forward to, لِتَسْتَعِدَّ لَهُ, to prepare ourselves for the moment of death, for the grave, for the questioning of the grave, for the day of judgment, and so on. أو في حكم شيء تحتاج إليه لتعلمه, or you're busy learning something because all of this requires knowledge. The tawheed of Allah, the oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَلْزِمْ لِسَانَكَ ذِكْرَ اللَّهِ ta'ala, and try your best to make your tongue always in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the dua, the istighfar, or reciting the Quran, or knowledge, or teaching, or enjoining good or forbidding evil, or rectifying or disputes among people, and to make our physical body busy with the ta'at, with the acts of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the last 3 lines, وَلْيَكُنْ مِنْ أَهَمِّهَا, and the most important, of course, الْفَرَائِض فِي أَوْقَاتِهَا, the obligations in its time, in the beginning of its time, على أكمل أحوالها, not just to do it, but to perfect it. ثم ما يتعدى نفع الخلق, then what its benefit extend to the people. وأفضل ذلك ما نفعهم في دينهم, and the best of all of that is what benefits them in their religion, and that also requires knowledge. كتعليمهم الدين, to teach people the deen. If we all know Surah Al-Fatiha, teach Surah Al-Fatiha to someone that doesn't know Surah Al-Fatiha. If we know the meaning of La ilaha illallah, teaching someone, what is the meaning of La ilaha illallah? What's the meaning of La ilaha illallah, by the way? لا معبود بحق إلا الله. No one is worthy of worship except Allah. The only one that we worship is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And every time we learn something, we should have the sincerity in our hearts to teach for the sake of Allah, to get the rewards of this. وَهَدَيَتِهِمْ إِلَى الصِّرَاطِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ, and for us to be means of their guidance to as-sirat al-mustaqim. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who benefit from the Naseeha, and to be always reminded of these types of meanings. And the way to this is to be close and attached to the book of Allah, and to read the book of Allah, to read the Quran with heart being ready for receiving the message of the Quran on a daily basis, so that we do not become in the state of forgetfulness. And inshallah ta'ala, again, we can continue with what's in this book in some other times. Just remember, inshallah ta'ala, because afterwards he talks about a beautiful example, a long example that also makes us reflect, talks about the corruption or the things that corrupt the deeds, talks about the fear of Allah and how to be watchful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, night prayer, adhkar, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how a person becomes steadfast upon the deen of Allah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us benefit from what we heard. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. جزاكم الله خير.
Inshallah, the food's ready in a few minutes. We just want to have all the kids stay downstairs.